Good evening and welcome to another edition of Black and Azul, coming to you live this evening, the Saturday Night Live, version of Black and Azul. Charles Wollin here with you, coming to you from my home. The rest of the team, of course, coming to you from their homes. Let us introduce the rest of the team. Jamon Moore, of course, with us. We've got lots of great data, charts, and analysis coming from Jamon this evening. He runs Quakes Epicenter, and you can find him on Twitter at JMooreQuakes. Also joining us tonight, of course, Alex Morgan, who runs the website Quakes_talk. And we are going to get into it. Of course, the Quakes, wow, just wow. I don't know what kind of words we want to use for that match. I think it was kind of one of those things where you kind of remember where you were when that happened. Lots of different flashbacks to Goonies 2012. Lots of comparisons to Shea Salinas, scoring against the Galaxy. But initial thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, Charles, it was an utterly, utterly absurd game. San Jose's first game of the tournament against Seattle was cagey and tactical and defined by each team's defensive caution. But this was basically the exact opposite. It was riddled with errors and unnecessary risks. It was so entertaining and so chaotic. And of course, Shea Salinas had to score that stoppage time winner. He's got to be one of the most clutch players in MLS. And I think that the clip of Guido Bonini, the strength coach for the Quakes, waving the magic spray as a sort of flair during their raucous celebration will be one of the enduring moments of this tournament. And this game would, I think, definitely be a highlight of the season for the Quakes.
It's definitely hard to top it. I don't know how you can top this other than just go out and win the whole thing, right? Shea Salinas, I thought, put it best on Instagram when asked if he would prefer to have a win like that or prefer to have a win like he's had at Stamford Stadium, and he said it's two different things. One is celebrating with a crowd of 50,000 people, which you just can't compare to. But the other was this was celebrating with us. There were no fans. We did it for ourselves. We did it for each other. We've been here working for the last 3 weeks to bond and to become a team. And we've put in the effort, and this was a celebration for all the effort that we've been putting in. And, you have to, because it's got to be crazy to have a win like that and to have no fans there to celebrate. I think we're going to look back in 10 years, at this whole kind of COVID time and whatever happens this season. And it's just going to be this weird anomaly that they're going to be writing athletic articles or whatever takes the place of the Athletic in 10 years about this particular tournament and the craziness that's going on. I mean, even the game tonight, the Galaxy and LAFC, a 6-2 type game. It's been a tournament where either it's been a snoozer like last night with RSL and Minnesota United, or it's been crazy with 8, 6, 7 goal type games.
10 years from now, I think this one will show up in an ESPN 30 for 30. It's got it.
Definitely different.
Yes, certainly one for Quakes history for the books. And to be fair, it could have ended up a different way, right? It was kind of on a knife's edge, but they were able to gain back the momentum, and we'll get into that. But it literally had every single emotion, from being 2-0 down and then getting the equalizer right before halftime, and then the substitutions and just everything. I mean, stoppage time, 9 minutes of stoppage time. It was just ridiculous. Definitely one of those ones to remember, and pure football joy. And it was nice to see kind of the Quakes Twitter come alive and online after that. And also to see the community, right? Where, this team hasn't had, every single bit of attention on it. And we talked about the saturation of media and in the Bay Area when it comes to sport, and a lot of the focus on a San Francisco Giants or a Raiders moving or an A's in the stadium, and the Niners getting to the Super Bowl, and here's the Quakes, and it's like boom, and I just, we're looking down at my phone and go, oh my goodness, like this is really happening. And so, it was something I think the Quakes really did need, not just on the field, but I think off of it too, to get more eyeballs on, what's really going on, and under the tutelage of Matias Almeida and what he's trying to build. Certainly. Just a shout out to everybody that's tuning into the program. Remember that you can always ask us questions. We will get your comments into the stream. I think we were doing a little bit more of that last time, and we want to continue that. So we are seeing that. We are listening to you. I see you, Alicio Sandoval. I see you, Earthquakes Fan TV, and Jesus Solorio. By the way, you were the MVP last episode. So I just wanted to give you a quick shout out. Let's move on to the yellow shorts. The yellow shorts. I know there was so much about the yellow shorts. Yikes, or I love it, or I'm not sure, or whatever gets the job done. Alex?
Yeah, it's going to have to be a yikes for me, Charles. I actively dislike the yellow kits. I think it's weird that they look so much like the Galaxy's kits. It's weird that they're the colors of the San Jose City flag, since nobody has any attachment to that flag. I think the stripes on the chest clash horribly with the Intermedia logo. But look, I think it's gained cult status now. I think that game was the best possible advertisement for that kit. So I can't see it going away at this point.
Yeah, I ran a poll on my Twitter account, and got some pretty good responses to it. Now, the thing that was really interesting to me was the pregame numbers and then the postgame numbers. And not only the pregame numbers, but after the Quakes were down 2 goals, because the votes were still coming in. And at that point, they were overwhelmingly negative. It was time to burn these shorts and to never see them again. And by the end of the game, and by the way, it was 60% yuck. I think I have it here. 60% yuck at that point. And by the end, all of a sudden, it was all the way down to 44. I think it did kind of get that kind of cult status. I saw a lot of people, neutrals, commenting about them. I did have a conversation about this particular kit. Back at our very last press conference we got to do at Earthquake Stadium before the shutdown. And I believe my recollection is that there's actually, they can wear blue shorts with this particular one. That's my recollection. Don't hold me to it, but I think they can. I think the reason they did not was because of Vancouver's colors. And my understanding is that the league actually makes the determination in terms of what color that they're going to wear. And they were anticipating they probably would wear more blue than yellow. Again, this is my recollection of this conversation, which was months and months ago, and was kind of just on the side. But we'll see. We'll see if it's going to be yellow. Maybe this will be a thing now after this result. Maybe they're going to never do the blue. Who knows? That's so long as they're winning with them.
Yeah, that's a great tidbit, Jamon. For me, I actually think the yellow shorts are the best part of the kit. For me, it's the jersey that I don't like. So I think they got to go full send and stick with the yellow shorts at this point.
Yeah, my other conversation on this was the kit wasn't exactly what they submitted to Adidas, but they ran out of ability to get any further changes to it. So it's what it is. So, but that happens. What I'm hearing is that actually happens a lot in MLS. Teams keep asking for changes, and at some point, Adidas just goes and cuts it off.
And Jamon, follow up to that. When you mean the changes, do you mean design, or do you mean more the specific color and the specific color code to that? Because maybe they wanted a specific color that they didn't get.
Little bit of both. I think there was some back and forth even on the yellow and the exact yellow shade it was supposed to be. And some of the earlier, I think, ones ended up with a lot of back and forth. There is, from what I heard, a significant amount of back and forth on that kit. And at some point, the further requests were not able to be taken up. So that's about as much as I can offer on it.
It's interesting of your poll, Jamon, that you had most of the precincts reporting they didn't like the shorts, and then after the match, some folks changed their minds.
Kind of agree on them.
As someone that likes ranked choice voting, I think that maybe we can tease the poll potentially again. Let's get into some of the comments. Alicio Sandoval said he liked the shorts. Jesus Solorio, you are just you're a gem. You are absolutely a gem. Corner taken short. I mean, keep it up. Keep it up. Saturday Night Live version of Black and Azul. That's brilliant. Joel Velez does It Looks Like San Jose State, SJSU. Alicio Sandoval likes that. Eric Santiago likes the blue shorts all the way. Shout out to Eric Santiago as well. Big fan of the show. A huge Earthquake supporter as well, and just an overall fantastic lad who personally inspires me within the community in many ways. And I know that you guys appreciate his stuff too. So shout out, Eric, your 30th birthday, and I know you had a great celebration. So appreciate you, pal.
Yeah, happy birthday, Eric.
Happy birthday.
Greg Cohn says still looks like LAG jerseys to me. Not really a comment on the shorts yet, but Greg, if you have a comment on the shorts, chime in. Pete Bogdus says he agrees with Greg Cohn, or potentially with what Eric said. And then Eric says he would like to see the red away kits back, which, to be fair, we saw that back in 2011 and 2012 into 13. And then I think once the Quakes moved to Earthquake Stadium at the time, I'm not sure, did they drop the red jersey at one point?
I think they had the red for the first year. That's
right.
I think it was still for the first year, because I'm remembering certain Quakes wearing it that played in that first year. So
let's take a look at the quote here from Matias Almeida and what he had to say about the game. Seemed a bit gobsmacked, to be fair. And as a football romantic, he really said some good stuff here. Let's take a look. I'm proud of coaching this team. I believe in each one of them. They showed a great level of play last season. Despite the bad start at the beginning of the season, we are a sporting family. Like the way I try to coach and transmit to my teams everywhere I go. This team goes beyond just football. They have important values, but I'm not saying that today because we won a 4-3. I say it, and I wouldn't have said it if we would have lost, because I train them every day. That is classic Matias Almeida. Interesting that he says he would have said the same thing if they had lost that game. But certainly his happiness is transmitted through this quote.
Yeah, I like the second part here where it says, I bore them sometimes. But I told them that I would not stop on insisting, so that each one of them becomes a better player. And in consequence, they will make me a better coach. We work together, and with joy. It's a joyful group, a group that knows that they can mess up as long as they insist on becoming better. And, we're going to get into this a little bit, but, this is the type of thing that you hear from Matias a lot, that he wants them to take the risks and be willing to make mistakes in order to risk something. I hope that I can transmit that, and they are giving me these kinds of nights with football happiness that are marked forever. This match will stay with me in my mind and in my heart.
Yeah, to me, this quote just speaks to the human element of Matias's coaching style. Looking back on that victory, tactically, I don't think it was replicable, but I do think that the team spirit and the human side of Almeida's philosophy I think it makes that sort of comeback more likely. And Charles Wollin of MLSsoccer.com wrote a great piece about this. He waxed lyrical about Almeida's coaching style. And I think the fact that they're so stubborn and so willing to take risks and so unified helps them in those situations as much as it hurts them in others. I think it helps them get those unlikely wins. And sometimes that human element can compensate for some of their tactical deficiencies.
Yeah, this is something where Almeida has said before that he likes players who take risks, who are willing to put their neck on the line to make a mistake. And I think you look at a situation like what Judson did in the own goal, right? You know, he was supposed to get that pass from Jackson Ewell, and you know, there's a referee may have gotten a bit in the way there. He turns the ball over. He sprints 100 yards down the field. The Athletic timed it and said it was 10.98 seconds to go 100 yards. That's ridiculous numbers for someone who's already been sprinting up and down a field for a bit of time. And he gets all the way back, and he's rewarded all that effort with an own goal. And I think Almeida looks at that situation and says, I look at the effort that he gave to get back. I'm not going to blame him for that particular mistake. You know, if he hadn't been there, it would have been easy tap-in goal anyway. You know, that's the kind of coach that Matias is, always willing, I think, to give his players a break. Now, at the same time, I can call him on it a little bit, because when I asked him about Flo earlier in the season, he's like, well, he made a lot of mistakes last season. I'm thinking, okay, well, isn't that what you prize in players? Taking some risks. It's okay to make a few mistakes. So he has played both sides of this a little bit. And, you know, it's something that I think he's willing to give the right guys, let's say, the benefit of the doubt.
And Jamon, I think Judson obviously has gotten the stick for that goal, but I actually think that Jackson Ewell was equally culpable in that goal.
Much.
He was the last man back. He didn't know what to do with the ball, so he offloaded it to Judson, sort of a hospital pass, and then he got sucked up and let not one but two Vancouver players in behind him, and then he didn't track back as fast as Judson either. So I think Judson's work effort is commendable, and he was the unlucky one in that situation, and that Jackson was far more culpable.
Yeah, after I went back and watched it a couple of times, I was able to see a little bit more than I noticed in the moment. And the interesting thing to me was that, or at least the question that we didn't get to ask Matias Almeida in kind of the post-game craziness was, you know, who was supposed to be the safety valve there? Was it supposed to be Ewell? And why would you pass the ball in that particular situation to the safety valve? Or did Matias actually draw up a play in which there was no safety valve? Because I've literally never seen a goal that happened like that before, even on a counter off of a corner. I've never seen a 75 yards of daylight all the way to a goal like that before.
Yeah, it seemed like they were pushing. Yeah, seemed like they were pushing so hard to try to get back in the game. Then they also put themselves behind as well in that sequence, which ended up being so bizarre. And you know, I think on the broadcast stream, I think the commentators were, "This is surely a goal. This is surely a goal," and almost calling the goal before it even occurred.
Yeah.
But just a bizarre sequence, and I'm sure he's had a good chat with the squad, of course, in training about defending set pieces, after taking a set piece or after taking a corner, potentially being susceptible to a counter attack like that. And credit to Vancouver for also doing their homework on breaking quickly and in typical Marc Dos Santos style, being able to do that.
Yeah, there were two things that we noticed, and I know you want to get into the first goal of it, Alex. But the two things that we noticed is that, remember we talked on our last show and we said that Vancouver was, their media was talking about whether Almeida was concerned about being pressed high and such. And it turns out they actually did press high. That first goal is a result of that type of pressure. But the other thing to be, really wary of is when a team is down a number of strikers, usually what they do is put their fastest midfielder up top. And, the Quakes really got burned there with some speed. And it started off, a couple dangerous situations like that, including the first two goals really were the result of Vancouver being able to transition quickly and be able to use that kind of speed. Alex, I know you had some comments on that first goal.
Yeah, well, I just think the Quakes took too many disproportionate and unnecessary risks. You talk about the Judson goal. that wasn't like an erroneous situation. That wasn't an error. The Quakes had tons. They had 22 offensive corners, which is a new MLS record. And for almost all of the corners, even at the very opening whistle, they only had 1 or 2 men back to cover and stop the counterattack. I mean, there are teams who play more conservatively when they're chasing the lead in the last minute of a cup final. It just felt so entirely disproportionate. And to me, it didn't really make sense either, because they had a ton of corner routines and a ton of corner plays to try and create space. So all of those players were only crowding the box and they weren't actually getting any service. So to me, the Quakes weren't losing anything if they'd kept another man back in defense. And I think towards the end of the game in the second half, they did finally make that adjustment.
Let's talk about the corners. 22, an MLS record. Wow. I mean, they did score off of 1. Excuse me, 2. Osvaldo Alanis getting them back in the match. And Jesus Soria said, did we break another record versus Vancouver? Yes, 22 corners. Joel Velez, good work there.
Yeah, and then also Andy Rios' intentional, unintentional flick toward goal. It looks pretty.
Give him the benefit of the doubt.
I don't know how intentional it was at the end of the day.
I mean, he did stick his leg out, and it looked intentional to me with the outside of his foot there. The way
I think he intended to redirect it toward goal. I think he got a little bit lucky that it went in.
Right, as intentional as it was also quite unintentional.
Exactly.
Well, look, guys, I think 22 corners to me means the Quakes need a big man. I mentioned this last episode. They need a target forward to put those chances away. If they could sign Peter Crouch and coax him out of retirement, I think they should. More seriously, though, I think the Quakes completely wasted their first 10 corners. I think they were all overhit or played to the top of the box to Lima and Ewell or Judson, who had no space. And it was only after the 10th corner that they started to get the ball into the 6-yard box. I think at one point Almeida actually screamed that they needed to get better service at one point. And then they started to mix up the plays a little bit too. Espinosa cut inside down the line at one point and started to get those balls in from the touchline. And that helped. That was a dangerous play. They played their first near post corner, which was, surprise, surprise, Rios' goal. And then their first free kick of the second half was the first they served directly into the box without playing short. And Alanis had a pretty wide open header at the back post that he should have converted. Of course, that's exactly how we scored later in the game.
Yeah, if you, according to American Soccer Analysis, we've done this research before. I'll simplify it. It's about a 2% chance to score on a corner. That's not a lot. In 22 corners, the probability adds up to about 45% to get 1 goal. The Quakes got 2, which is only about a 20% chance. So as we will get into a little bit later in the show, I'm not really sure that that's a replicable strategy going forward.
Let's talk about the substitutions. 4 substitutions for Matias Almeida in the 63rd minute, bringing on his talisman Wando, including in that and helping getting a goal back as well. Masterclass, or just a lot, or just rolling the dice? What did you guys make of his changes and his tactical moves on the field here? Alex?
Yeah, Charles, I think it was a little bit of everything. I think it was a bold move. It was a risky move, but there was definitely a smidge of desperation there as well, because the Quakes were set to be crashing out of the tournament. But I think that the substitution might have been the story of the match. Actually, it was like a hockey line change, and to me, it shows how the rule change, allowing 5 substitutions in a game, radically changes the game. It allows coaches to radically change the game with their subs. And we talked about it on the show last week. Jamon, you mentioned that it might make more teams inclined to keep some of their attacking players on the bench and then introduce them later in the game in those pivotal moments in the second half. And that's exactly what Almeida did when he introduced Wondolowski, Fierro, Salinas, and Danny. Vancouver simply had no idea at that point how to cope with all those attacking players on the pitch. It was crazy and it was chaotic. And I think that's exactly what the Quakes needed in that moment.
Yeah, and 3 or 4 of those had an impact. I know you can guess which one did not. It was asked to both Shay over the Instagram Live and as well as Wando in the press conference this week. What did they think of the 4-man sub? And they both absolutely loved it. They basically said, we went out there, we were fresh, they were not. We took advantage of it. I still have some concern about because it's Orlando, because it's hot and humid, because we're still seeing cramping going on, that 4 subs could get risky for potential injuries. But it hasn't backfired so far. And and that also, by the way, set an MLS record with those 4 substitutions, because it's the first time it had happened in MLS history. It had been done, I think, in the Premier League. Manchester United, I think, subbed on 5, what I saw, and in the NWSL tournament as well. So it's been done in soccer, but the first time for MLS. Yeah,
I definitely think that it certainly needed to happen, to inject a lot more energy into the match, and why not, and go for it. Otherwise, the Quakes would have been in a little bit of trouble, and it worked. And now this manager knows what these other players can bring to the table. And these are also players that want to get in the first team, the first 11, and be picked every single match. And especially when you have the record goal scorer in the league in your ranks sitting on the bench, it's not a bad person to take off the bench at all. He got his 160th goal. Yes, that was 160. That's vintage. That's kind of classic. And actually, it reminded me, and this is going to sound a little left field for a lot of people, but it reminded me in a way of Steven Gerrard, almost pretty much inspiring Liverpool in 2005 against Milan in the Champions League final. It wasn't a final. It wasn't a cup semifinal. But it really showed that Wando, when he scored that, I see so much when I see him play, and when he scores that goal, I'm sitting there going, okay, all right. And he's, they're getting the ball out of the net more. Let's get this. Let's keep going. And with those substitutions, I definitely it brought that kind of image to me, and then I said to myself, wow, okay, kind of eternal captain. In that moment, it was so very inspiring to see a player of his age and what he's done, score that goal to bring it back, and then keep going.
Yeah. And Charles, we have a comment here from Gregory, who says that he saw some analysis that said that the Quakes have little drop-off in talent between their starters and their bench, and that's an advantage in a tournament like this. And you are absolutely right, Gregory. We talked about this on the past couple episodes of Black and Azul. I think the analysis you're referring to is probably Jamon's and from the guys over at American Soccer Analysis. That's absolutely true. The Quakes have loads of attacking options, and that was the difference in this game, I think.
Let's take a look at the XG. Let's pull the XG up, and let's show this wonderful chart off here, Jamon.
Yeah, so Vancouver scoring 3 goals because of the own goal, and just because of the way that the game played out, they had a very low chance of actually scoring 3 goals in this game. You can see that the Quakes probably were good for 2 or 3, and 4 was considered kind of an upside for them. But on the expected goals, they were 79% chance to win this one, and Vancouver only had about a 7% chance, if I'm seeing that correct, and then 14% chance for a draw. That's almost what we saw. But if it wasn't for Shea Salinas dribbling past 8 people, having a ball bounce up and hit his thigh, almost his hand, falling in front of them, and then nutmegging the keeper. It would have ended up as a draw.
Funny that the 78% win percentage, just 10% more than 68% possession for the Quakes as well, almost directly in line with possession.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's just one thing that I don't think that chart shows, and I don't think it shows exactly how well that Vancouver took advantage of some of the Quakes' positional deficiencies, specifically in the first goal. I think what Adnan's goal shows is that the Quakes are really vulnerable against opposing fullbacks who are good going forward. We saw this against Seattle, who were most dangerous when Nuhu was bombing forward down the left. And I think there are 2 reasons why these fullbacks give the Quakes so many headaches. The first is that the Quakes give them a lot of space because Tommy Thompson and Lima are man marking. If the opposition wingers drift inside, then the flanks are basically completely open. And San Jose's only cover is Kasia, who's in a roaming sweeper role. And the second reason is that Espinosa and Vaca are both really attacking-minded players, so they're always looking to try to step up and make a double team and force a dangerous turnover when the opposition center back is on the ball, which means that they have to abandon their marks in that situation. So that leaves the opposing fullbacks unmarked with tons and tons of space to run into. And Matt Doyle from MLSsoccer.com did a really good analysis of this on Twitter. Vancouver exploited that positional weakness perfectly in the build-up to their first goal. Espinosa stepped up to the center back, abandoned Ali Adnan, who ran into the space that his winger vacated. Then Kasia sprinted across to cover. But of course, he's always going to be at a positional disadvantage against a quality DP fullback bearing down on him. And sure enough, Adnan cut inside and finished. And watching in real time, I think that goal was disorienting because it looked so easy. And I think that's one concerning thing for the Quakes that chart might not reflect. It's that they're putting themselves in these situations. And given that it's such a major weakness, I would expect them to have a better contingency plan. It just seems like a risk that's not worth it, but Almeida keeps insisting on taking.
Yeah, they haven't been burned enough, I think, by it. There's been a couple different situations where, Jackson this season has stepped or gotten caught in between in the wrong type of situation, and then all of a sudden there's been a transition the other way. I think it happened on this goal as well. It also happened back against Toronto. And you're right, when the other team can transition quickly and also throw numbers forward, the Quakes scramble to pick up their marks. Sometimes, depending upon where the ball goes, they need to try to switch in the middle of a counterattack. And it's hard enough to defend counterattacks as it is, much less track all the different marks and making sure that everybody has someone. And you do see situations where they actually don't get man-to-man in some of those counterattack situations. Someone just has to kind of split the difference and hope for the best. Sometimes they get bailed out by a bad pass or something like that. But, we used to joke about DP left backs back in the Sean Francis days, and Vancouver's actually gone and done it, and looks pretty good to me.
Yep.
Let's hear from Chris Wondolowski about the offense and how it continues to improve and what it needs to improve for the Earthquakes.
That's a big part of that is how we're trying to break down teams. And I think that's something that we really tried to work on. And, especially this last week and continue on this tournament is how to break the lines, especially in between the midfield and find the pockets in between the third six and center backs, basically, and being able to be a little bit more dangerous. But I also believe that as this tournament goes on, it's going to open up more and more. And that's, I think, going to suit us very well, where we're able to kind of snuff them out on defense, but offensively, we're able to find that space and be creative in those one-on-one opportunities. And we do feel confident in that. We know that we have not been able to execute offensively the way that we want to. I think that we're starting to get into decent areas, but not able to have that final pass, the final shot. And I think that we need to continue to get in those dangerous areas, but able to have a little bit more composure to find that final pass and pick them out, because I still think that we are getting into very good areas and good opportunities to be able to where we should be able to produce goals. And I think that it's tough coming back, but I think that we will continue to be on the same page and hopefully continue to grow on that.
Yeah, that's that was a question that I had asked Chris this week. Was what we saw in the last game was 2 goals off of corners, and a big transition moment, and things like that. Those aren't really replicable situations, and the thing that's kind of been concerning is that the types of goals that the Quakes were able to score last year, or at least up through July of last year, are not the type of goals that they've really been able to score so far this year. It's starting to feel a little bit like defenses are tuned in to what the Quakes are going to do. We've got a chart here of Vancouver's defensive actions that I'd like to point out here. So one of the things that you'll notice is on Espinoza's side, what he likes to do is, I think everyone who's on this show frequently knows, is he likes to try to get all the way to the end line by the 6-yard box and then hit a cutback toward the penalty dot, somewhere between the penalty dot and the 6-yard box. In fact, if you take a look last year at what made Wando so successful at being able to get 15 goals, quite a few of his goals were from Espinoza cutbacks. Well, Espinoza kept attempting those cutbacks in the first half, particularly, and Vancouver kept shutting them down. And you can see here, a lot of those defensive actions are on that right side where Espinoza was trying to do that. You see a blocked pass, or you see a blocked cross, or you see a clearance. Sometimes those clearances went out for corners, and different things like that. And he really had a tough time breaking down Vancouver. And so it's something definitely to be wary of, and something that I asked Espinoza about.
And there's a ton of interceptions there, right at the top of the 18.
Yeah.
Seemed like he definitely felt targeted and such. Obviously, opposing teams are going to do that to one of the Quakes' most potent offensive players. Do we want to pull up the quote by Cristian Espinoza?
Yeah, I'll take it. Go ahead. So the question I asked him was, do you feel that defenses are now looking at you? Maybe defenses in the past were more concerned about, Chris Wondolowski or somebody else, but at the moment, I think they're mostly concerned with Cristian Espinoza, and they've kind of figured that out, particularly ones in the Western Conference. And so I asked him, do you think that teams are now keying on what you're trying to do and trying to game plan for you? And he said, yes, I think you are right. This is through a translator. Other defenders and teams are starting to notice that I tend to use my skills and my teammates for support, whether that is to pass over the ball and have them take the attention, or in some instances take direct shots on goal. And we did see Cristian try a couple shots in this game as well, try to cut back to the inside and try to put a shot on goal, or to put a ball back across. I can't remember if he was the one who passed it to Jackson Ewell, who had a really nice shot on target. But he's going to need to find other ways to be able to get done what he wants to do. And we talked at the beginning of the season that he's going to need to score more goals this season. And if you're always trying to get to the baseline, always trying to hit the cutbacks, that's not going to happen. Defenses are starting to pick up on that. The Quakes are going to need to adjust, but there's some concerns. And I've done a bit of analysis as to what were the Quakes doing last year and what are the Quakes doing this year through 4 games so far. And if you guys are okay with that, I'd like to go ahead and jump into some of that here. So the first chart that we've got is relative to the league itself. This is something that I don't know. I have not seen that anyone else, analysts covering the league, has put together quite something like this. I think this is a bit of a first. Hopefully it's very readable for you, because I decided to put 2 charts side by side here. On the left, what you see is all the shots that were taken in the league and between 2015 and so far through 2020, and the type of pass that made that shot available. What you'll see on the far left is there's corners, there's crosses, there's cutbacks. That's the kind that Christian Espinoza likes to hit. There's a head pass, which is not all that frequent, but it's somewhat useful in our modeling. Long balls, progressive passes. Progressive passes sometimes get confused with through balls. They're not. Progressive passes are balls that are passed 25% closer to the goal from the starting point to the pass, and obviously completed. Regular passes, meaning that there's no special description for them. They're just whatever kind of, short little pass or whatever the case is, nothing special to them. Through balls, I think everyone knows that those are quite effective in many leagues, including MLS. And then none, meaning that the shot had no pass. It was created by the shooter. But what you see over on the right is what is actually effective. And one of the things that you notice is that crosses are a big part of the goals that are scored in MLS. They're a little bit higher on as a percentage. Cutbacks, 3% higher than they are in the shots. Head passes is the same. Long ball, not quite as effective as for a goal scoring opportunity. Progressive passes are 8% more effective, and this is a very key thing that I want to get in with a little bit tonight. These regular passes, they're unpredictable. You can't really game for them. They're just things that kind of happen in the flow of play. Maybe there was some other type of pass that led to the regular pass, but it's just like I said, kind of a run-of-the-mill type pass, sometimes not intentional to create a shot, and it's just to find an open man, and then the shooter creates some action from that. Through balls, very effective, a 4% improvement as well, although not very frequent when they're used. They are very effective. And then 15% of all goals don't have any sort of pass leading to them. So this is kind of the baseline for the league, and that's kind of an important measurement to keep in mind before we take a look at the next chart. So there are certain types of passes that are more effective in scoring goals than others. This is somewhat reflected in measurements like expected goals, but I will even say that the expected goal models that I'm aware for MLS do not factor all these different pass types. For instance, the American Soccer Analysis model only factors in like 3 of those types. The one that's most effective, progressive passes, is not specifically reflected in the model. And I've actually challenged some of the guys who work on the model in ASA about this and said, hey, maybe we should look at putting some of these types of things in the model. So that's something that maybe will happen over the next couple months or so.
And Jamon, can you clarify what the difference between a progressive pass and a regular pass is?
Yeah, the progressive pass is a pass that goes toward the goal at least 25% of the distance. Now, if it goes 30 yards or more, we just call that a long ball. That's like the keeper just hits the ball down the field and prays and hopes that somebody's going to get a head on it or whatever, right? So that's not a progressive pass. That's a long ball in this type of scenario if it's 30 yards or more. So it's less than 30 yards, but it gets the ball 25% closer to the goal. If you watch the Toronto game this past week, Toronto was extremely efficient. Alejandro Pozuelo is amazing at this. He put balls forward into space that his guys ran on and were able to finish off. He had a hat trick of assists in that game. Toronto lost the expected goals battle to Montreal by a good bit. All 4 of their big chances they scored on, I believe 3 of those had progressive passes. They're very, very effective for the teams that have the right kind of person who knows how to hit them. The interesting thing is the Quakes do. Both Magnus Eriksson and Jackson Ewell are both effective at hitting progressive passes. What the Quakes are not effective in is turning that next pass into a shot. They tend to play a ball through and then, we're going to hit the ball out wide, rather than try to go straight on to goal. I think one of the criticisms that people would say of Magnus Eriksson is that he plays a bit slowly. Sometimes he gets between the lines and gets balls in space, and this was mentioned during this week in one of the press conferences, that Magnus gets between the lines, receives a ball in space, And I think people don't like the fact that sometimes he doesn't recognize the opportunity that he has to be able to immediately go forward and to create some sort of pain for the opposition. A player like Pozuelo is very, very good and very efficient at doing that. So the next chart we have kind of shows 4 different teams. What I did is I picked out Los Angeles FC, so LAFC, who scored 6 goals tonight. New York City FC, who was basically top of the East for a good bit of the season last season, and I think the most potent offense on the East Coast. Then you have San Jose down in the lower left corner, and then you have Vancouver. And I wanted to just show what a team that's not very efficient on the offensive side looks like. And what you'll see is this is a comparison of the goals of these different key pass types compared to the league average. Take a look at Los Angeles FC there. Their progressive pass goals, 14.9 more than the league average. Almost 15 goals more than the league average they scored off of progressive passes last season. New York City FC, that number is almost 5. They're also very good at through balls. Both of those teams are above the league average on through balls. So teams, based upon their styles, try to gravitate toward a specific type of pass that they're looking to set up shots on. For the Quakes, that is the cutback, particularly from Christian Espinoza. And you can see there that the Quakes actually had the highest cutbacks goals last season in the league. They were 4.6 over the league average in terms of their goals. And then also they were pretty good at regular goals, just like New York City FC was. So that means that a lot of times that's that dink and dunk stuff that happens in the box. It's not a specific pass, and frankly, not all that replicable. And that's kind of the concern here, is that there's a good bit of that San Jose used last season in order to get their goals. What are they not good at? Progressive passes. Negative 3.1 against the rest of the league in progressive passes. If you take a look at Vancouver, negative 4.1 in progressive passes. Vancouver's problem from an offensive side, they're not good at anything. And so in each team you see this. If you take a look at Colorado had 10 corner kick goals last season. Kind of a crazy number of corner kick goals. That's far ahead of anyone else in the league. So, that type of success is not easy to do. It's not very replicable. It's not a way to go out and win games and to be a potent offense in this league.
And so, Jamon, what do you think the Quakes need to do to increase the number of progressive passes they're making and give themselves more options in the attack? Do you think it's strategic, it's tactical, and that they need to practice those different different progressions, or is it personnel? Do they need a left winger who can balance with Christian Espinoza?
That's a great question. I think this is an opportunity for Cade Cowell. What I would like to see them really kind of work on is getting balls in behind the defense. And that's kind of tough right now because teams seem to be very content to kind of bunker and force the Quakes to break them down. Why? It's not that good at breaking teams down. And in Vancouver, very content to sit back for most of that game and let the Quakes have 22 corner kicks, even if they're kicking it out of bounds themselves. Why? Because it's a 2% chance to score on a corner kick. Sometimes the Quakes seem to celebrate getting a corner, but then when it's only a 2% chance, their chance of, like I said, of scoring a corner kick goal in that game was only about 44%. They got lucky and got 2. Of course, Alanis, I think, is a special player, and to your point of not having a 9, he's a pretty good substitute in the box for that, obviously. But this is something that I am a little bit concerned about the Quakes' ability to replicate this. I want to go through 2 more charts very quickly if we can. I'm going to probably do an article about this and do this in a lot more detail, but if we can, I want to hit this very last part of it. So I think if you got either the goal one or the shot one, either one will suffice. Great. This is the goals. Okay. So last season, you can see where the goals came from. They came from mostly regular type passes. They also came from individual efforts, 18.2% from individual efforts, and cutbacks. So like I said, they led the league in cutbacks. That's a pass that they need to hit. Well, what's going on this season? Nothing. Corners, crosses, and none. So it's taking individual efforts. They're basically relying on some of the hardest ways to score goals in order to put the ball in the net. Now, this is not including penalties and free kicks, FYI. But from a more of a run of play type perspective, the Quakes are not utilizing a lot of types of passes right now. But what I would like to see, to your question, Alex, is a lot more of those runs in behind, using the speed of Christian Espinoza, using the speed of a Cade Cowell, and also using the progressive passing abilities of Magnus Eriksson and Jackson Ewell to put balls in behind the defense into space and let the speed run onto those balls. The teams that are effective with this, that's what they tend to do. One of the things that LAFC is very effective on is going out to the wings and then playing a ball very fast back across the 18. It's not a true cutback. They don't dribble in all the way to the end line before they play it back. They play it immediately from the wing, and it disorganizes the defense. And they're very, very effective with it. And that is a progressive pass. It counts as a progressive pass, even though it comes from the wing, because it's moving the ball 25% closer to goal. And the defenses have a hard time adjusting to a quick ball out and a quick ball back in. The Quakes just need to add some variety to the offense. They can't keep going to the well on these things if they're not working. The last chart we have is shots, because goals are kind of infrequent. We also did this for shots, and you can kind of see the breakdown here as well. They are not doing the types of shots creating the types of situations which got them shots last year. So those are not happening so far. This is what needs to change. And both Chris Wondolowski and Christian Espinoza both agreed they've not been effective in this way.
And the one thing that I think that they should be focusing on and need to improve is also their finishing from the top of the box. Maybe it's that I'm watching the Premier League too much, because they make it look easy, curling it in from 18, 20 yards out. But the Quakes are getting so many opportunities from 20 yards from goal. But all of their goals in this tournament have been from within the 6-yard box. So that's a pretty bad conversion rate. And I think Ewell had the best opportunity at the top of the box in the last game. I think he could have finished it if he'd hit it with his left foot. That sort of technical deficiency surprised me, given that he's one of the most technical players on the team. I think in that situation, he needs to use his left foot, and improving his left foot might be able to take his game to the next level. But he was not the only one either. I think Magnus had a couple weak shots from the edge of the area, as did Vako. So I think if they're able to start putting those on target, that will force teams to step out a little bit more. And also, in turn, that will create more space in behind.
Yeah, and the type of pass I mentioned LAFC uses quite frequently is moving the ball from zone 14 in front of the box to the wing, but immediately getting it back, because the defense starts to pull back out, and then they're out of position and they're shooting that shot immediately. It goes from a situation where the defense is compact. Now, all of a sudden, you've pushed them out wide, and now you've moved it back to the middle, and you've created just enough space to be able to get that shot. You might even pull the goalkeeper a little bit from out of position as well, and trying to create opportunities. And that's what these special type of passes do. They get defenses out of position, and that's why the teams that are the best offenses in the league have these special types of passes that they consistently can score goals with.
And Jamon, can you remind me what zone 14 is? I know it was a hot topic last year, I think.
Yeah.
But we're not hearing as much about it recently, I don't think.
Zone 14, top of the box, anything right in front of the 18 is zone 14 is considered kind of the golden zone. From there, if you have a really good 10, if you have a really good striker of the ball, those are the spots from which to make the most dangerous passes, and also to be able to have a shot that's directly in front of goal, where you can be able to go to either corner and try to keep a goalkeeper guessing. The more the shots go to the wings, the lower the expected goals based upon the angles, the more the keeper can cover the goal more effectively. And it's a little bit easier for them to guess where you're going.
Absolutely outstanding work again, Jamon, for this data this evening, and really showing the ways in which our effective for the Quakes and that are effective for the league, and then also showing a great deal of comparison. And I look forward to the article when that comes out as well. Let's move on to Chicago. Tomorrow night, the final group game of Group B for the San Jose Earthquakes. Here are the standings. The Quakes sitting on top here in the group. 4 points for them, 2 games played. They're +1 in the goal differential. They play against Chicago, who is in second. They defeated Seattle with a goal in the last 10 minutes of the game by Pineda. Kind of a different Chicago team than we're used to seeing. New coaching staff as well. Let's hear from Chris Wondolowski on Chicago. He gave us kind of a little bit of a tactical preview himself.
Well, yes. First on Chicago, to be honest, they have a completely different team and roster than what we saw them last year. I think they have a new coaching staff, and I want to say it's almost 12 new players on the roster, including a DP who had a great goal in their first game. And so I thought that watching their first game against Seattle, who I think is a great opponent, they were so organized, and they had the 2 banks of 4, and they moved very well, and they actually had 5 in the back there. They played a 3-5-2, but the 2 wing backs almost had a 5-3-2 or at times, and it was pretty impressive to see how organized they were and to see how swift they were on the counterattack to get that goal. It was it was fun to watch, and I think that they're going to be a very tough team to break down in that sense. And so I think it's going to be important for us that we've been continuing to work on is, again, finding the little pockets of space off the midfielder's shoulders, and then being able to have the mobility to run off the ball. And I think that that's something that we need to continue to improve on, and that will help us get us along in this tournament.
Oh, there you have the leading goal scorer in the history of Major League Soccer giving a wonderful little tactical preview of what to expect tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Kickoff against Chicago. They thought it was going to obviously be Dallas, but then due to Dallas pulling out of the tournament due to positive COVID testing, unfortunately, Chicago now moved into the group, and it almost kind of had the coaching staff had to be quick on their toes. And Chicago faring quite well against the defending Major League Soccer champions. It's going to do a lot for their confidence. I'll be honest. And watching a little bit of the highlights of that game and some of that game, he's right. They are very organized, and it's not going to be some sort of cakewalk for this Quakes team. But this is a chance to really win the group, like he said.
Yeah, I was trying to get to see if Christian Espinoza would bite on a tactical question about the way that Chicago played Seattle. He didn't go for it. But from what I saw, a little bit of the game, I think I watched about 30-35 minutes of it. They looked like they kind of moved in that kind of 4-4-2 mid block defensively, and they moved their back line a little bit higher than I kind of expected them to do, given Seattle's vertical threats. But they're young and they're quick and they seem able to pull it off. That's when I'm talking about being able to use like a Cade Cowell and a Christian Espinoza to get in behind and be able to put balls into space for them. A team like Chicago might be a good one to be able to do that on. It just depends whether Chicago is going to come to try to play the Quakes straight up, or if they're going to play the old bunker and counter that other teams have been playing more recently.
And I think that's the big question for me, Jamon, because in this situation, Chicago's won their first game. The Quakes, are top of the group, have a 96% chance of progressing to the next round. That's according to 538's statistical model. So neither team will be incentivized to take a ton of risks. So it'll be a question of who wants to push the tempo.
Yeah, this is an interesting time to look at the way kind of Almeida has played these situations in the past, right? We've talked about how aggressive he gets, even though he gets a point in hand. Well, now he's got a tournament point, situation potentially in hand. Does he play for the draw here? Let just try to get the point and be able to make sure that you get out of the group, or does he really kind of go all out to try to win the group and play for 3 points? When it comes to the 70th minute, and let's say you have a tie 1-1 type game, right? This could be a really interesting time to find out how aggressive Almeida is willing to be in this type of scenario where it's knockout, basically knockout soccer.
In every other scenario, he's been more aggressive than I could have possibly imagined. So I don't anticipate anything changing.
Yeah, certainly we're going to find out some more information about substitutes and what that looks like, especially if he's winning a match, or if the match is tied, say, for instance, an hour in, and what that looks like, or what that doesn't look like, as you just referenced to, Alex, and what we've chatted about on the show, potentially removing a defensive midfielder like Judson, that is the heartbeat, that is the tempo, and maybe sticking on a striker, potentially maybe even going for the 3 points, but also, having a high risk of also losing 3 points at the same time. And so I think we're going to get a lot of information that we actually haven't gotten from this team this year out of this specific match. And then going into the knockout stage, I think we would see similar to what we saw in the first two matches, pending how injuries and cramping and folks being in favor or not in favor shape out.
Yeah. Jesus Soria is asking a good question here in the chat. He says, will we see the same lineup versus Chicago? And we actually asked Chris that question, Jason. I don't know if you had that video queued up or not, but if you have the ability to pull it, we ran that past Chris, and he gave us a response. If you don't have it, then that's cool. We can just let everyone know what he said.
I think that's actually one of our strengths, is our depth of our squad. And I think that, in Matthias's system, we're just able to plug in the next man up. And I think that makes it's a very nice thing to have. And it's something important that's going to play a big role in this tournament coming up. That being said, it's still a very important game. We want to try to win our group. We still have to make sure we qualify. I think that, we happen to play early in the tournament, so nothing is completely set before we play. And so we have to make sure we get our job done first and foremost. So I'm not really sure if there is going to be any rotation for the squad, but, I do think that everyone is ready, and, whoever is called upon will be able to give a good shift.
Yeah, so he didn't seem all that confident that there's going to be squad rotation, and in fact, he seemed to kind of more indicate that we'll probably see a bit of the same. But it also felt like they really enjoyed coming on as those kind of super subs in that kind of 4-man rotation, and being able to go super hard for 30 minutes with players that really can make an impact in a short-term type situation. So one of the things that I know people are going to be critical about Andy Rios, even though he scored 2 goals in 4 games, because they really want to see Wando, or they want to see Danny. But the fact is, right now, Andy Rios is fit to be able to go 100 minutes and not cramp up. That's not the case with Wando and Danny. So if you start either one of them, you are more than likely going to have to sub them out. When you start Andy Rios, you don't need to sub him out. You can put other people on the field. And I think that's something that Almeida has in mind when it comes to people like Andy Rios and Magnus Eriksson. They can go 100 minutes, and they've done it 2 straight games, and they can probably do it another game. And that's probably what his expectation is.
Let's move on to a few questions here. I'm going to go back up to the top and chat and use Alicio Sandoval's great question here. It was at the top of the show, and he said, do you believe the heavy possession numbers are by design, or do you think it's teams willing to give up and attempting to hit us on the counter? Who wants it?
I can take it. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's probably in these last 2 games, especially against Seattle, was more the latter. Seattle sat really deep with a low defensive block and were really comfortable letting San Jose possess the ball for a couple reasons, because San Jose are good when they have space in behind for Christian Espinoza to run onto. So it makes sense defensively for Seattle to sit deeper and allow Vako and Eriksson to get more time on the ball, because they've had trouble breaking teams down in the final third. And then the Quakes, because they take so many risks, they're also vulnerable to the counterattack. So that's what I would expect against Chicago. As Jamon said, Chicago played with a slightly higher defensive line, but I wouldn't be surprised if they drop that a little bit given the circumstances. And look, the Quakes have had a lot of possession, but they haven't been able to turn those into concrete chances. So, yeah, they can possess the ball all they want, but they haven't been able to capitalize. And so, if I were Matias Almeida, I would actually be a little bit more content having a little bit less of the ball, but being able to break in and having more space in behind.
Jesus Solorio earlier in the show referenced Lenny, Steven Lenhart, who of course was part of the Quakes Goonie era. And just a shout out to Steven Lenhart, who actually is still somewhat around the Quakes organization in some ways, and we've talked about him a lot on the show, but he's up there in Quakes folklore.
And I think he's the big man that the Quakes might need to get in the box to finish those crosses.
Maybe his knees are perfectly fine now after taking a few years off.
Yeah, lots of chatter, of course, about that number 9 position. Rios scoring on off that corner right before halftime. I think we'll have to bring up the number 9 chat and debate, depending on who Matias Almeida also starts against Chicago. And I know there's been a Husin versus Wando versus Rios. But I think it's important to chat about the number 9 position, that center forward position for the future, Alex. And your comments that you made last week stuck with me, and I think we're going to have to bring that segment, or continue to bring that segment up, as Wando goes into the twilight of his career here.
And as we head into this offseason, because the Quakes will have a lot of turnover. They have a lot of guys who are going to be out of contract. So it'll be interesting to see who they keep and who they replace, and who they replace them with.
All right. Any final questions, please drop them in the chat. Before we go, just wanted to wrap the show up on a different type of note this evening. Over the weekend, we lost an American leader who was so instrumental in championing civil rights, and John Lewis, who served in the House of Representatives as part of the so-called Big Six of leaders who helped organize the March on Washington in 1963 with Martin Luther King, James Farmer, Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, and Whitney Young, and such a predominant part of the fabric of civil rights in American life. The fact that he was part of the protesters that walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday, and had the opportunity, the 40th anniversary with President Obama 5 years ago, to commend that anniversary of such a brutal day. He is an inspirational hero to us all. And just wanted to honor him and the service that he gave to his country. Again, as we said in the beginning of the show, we want to do a job on shouting out leaders and different issues here on human rights and civil rights, and John Lewis embodied every single part of that. So let us make sure that we remember him and have him continue to inspire us in whatever kind of work that we do, because he made a lot of people's lives better and fought for it. And so we will miss him very much. All right, Quakes fans, tomorrow night, The Quakes play against Chicago Fire, 5 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Am I right, or am I wrong? FS1?
I think it's FS1 actually.
Okay, FS1. Let's just take one final question before we wrap up here. Freddie Estrada had written Florian starter. Should Florian start over Kasia? I know we could continue on about this. There's been a lot of chatter about this. It looks like a lot of folks are continuing to ask this question. Should Florian Youngworth start number one, and who should he start over? Obviously, Alanis. I don't think he would start over Alanis because the manager just got Alanis. Should he start over Kasia? Jamon?
I mean, I would like to see it. I don't think I put Kasia as much at fault for the first goal in the last game as some other people did. You see cutbacks, all the time against the grain, beat defenders in MLS. You can, it happens all over the field, probably 30, 40 times a game. So it happened in that one situation. He got Kasia going the wrong way and everything, and cut back and was able to make something of it. But that's a kind of a typical type of goal in MLS. I think there was a situation earlier in the season where we all wanted to see flow. There were several mistakes by Kasia committed, particularly on set pieces against Minnesota United. Hopefully Flo's in a good spot. Hopefully his head's in the right place. I thought he took advantage of his opportunity in the first game of the tournament. I'd like to see him get a shot to be able to see if we see something better with him.
Yeah, I think Flo is such a versatile player that he's a great option off the bench. And at this point, I think that Kasia and Alanis have an established partnership at center back. So at this stage in the tournament, I don't think it would be wise to disrupt that. But I think Flo is a good option off the bench. And maybe later in the regular season, if there is a regular season, Almeida might want to experiment with that.
All right. Well, that is our show for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into Black and Azul. Really appreciate it. Remember that we are a community, not just a show where we talk. We want to always put in your comments and your questions. And as we have our own banter here, keep commenting, keep asking your questions, because we like to drop those in and comment on those live as we continue to build our show. We're still a young show, 44 episodes, not bad. Getting up to 45, when we're 50, maybe a little different. With that being said, final thoughts this evening. I'm going to start with you, Jamon.
Yeah, I think Chicago might be a pretty good test for us to see something a little bit different. I'm hoping that Chicago will want to try to play a little bit more with the ball than we've seen from Vancouver and Seattle so far, and challenge the Quakes a little bit more defensively, on something besides a counterattack. We've seen a little bit too much. I think the caginess of the sit back and counter, and I'm optimistic for a little bit more open game. It sounded like Wando was expecting that we would see more openness as the tournament went on, and he hoped that would be an opportunity for them to have an easier time breaking down defenses. We'll see. We'll see if they're able to again get back to some of the success offensively that they had last season, not have to rely so much on these kind of miracle efforts.
Yeah, Charles, I was touched by your tribute to John Lewis. He was such an inspiring leader. I think we could all use some of the courage that he had, and may he rest in peace. And thinking about all these different issues in the world, Black Lives Matter, COVID, sometimes makes soccer feel insignificant. But I think the game against Vancouver was a reminder for me of why we watch soccer. It was such an incredible, inspiring game, and incredibly fun to watch. And the Quakes right now, I think, are a positive for a lot of people. They're in a really good position, top of the group. And we've talked a lot about their tactical deficiencies tonight, but they have a 96% chance of progressing to the next round. And I think if you'd asked us, where the Quakes would be sitting, if you'd asked us 2 weeks ago, we wouldn't have predicted that, right? So I think they've exceeded expectations, and I am excited to be able to watch them again tomorrow.
Thanks, Jamon and Alex. Tomorrow night's match, FS1, 5 p.m. kickoff, first place on the line in the group. But like Alex said, according to 538's analysis, the Quakes have a 96% chance to qualify for the round of 16 in the MLS is back tournament. I'm not sure when we'll be back, but we will be back at some point. We'll just keep you on your toes like usual. It's getting up to the 11 o'clock hour here. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. For our associate producer, Aaron Sholl, for Jamon Moore, you can find him at JMooreQuakes on Twitter. For Alex Morgan, you can find him at Quakes_talk on Twitter. My name is Charles Wollin, and Jason Sholl, who puts this wonderful program together. I'm giving him 3 pats on the back, cheersing him with a beer, because this is his Saturday night as well. So thank you so much, Jason. Again, happy birthday to Eric Santiago, and appreciate everybody for tuning in to the show. We'll see you next time.